the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 165 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 21 of A Storm of Swords. That's Jaime 3.
And as you probably know by now, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Hopefully, we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information, which will be particularly handy if you are not reading along. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm on a high from our chat with our sustainers, which was so much fun, as it always is.
It always is. It's so much fun.
It spans the gamut from, like, toothpaste stains to...
That's right, I forgot about the toothpaste stain story. We went into in-depth in our discussion of House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon?
Some really cool conversations about that. And, of course, you told the story that you mentioned on air that you'd tell on the Sustainer call. Yeah, which you did.
Become a sustainer and I'll share it with you, but it's too juicy for prime time, let me tell you.
That's right. Yeah, and we always learn something about Australia.
We do.
Every time.
So, beautiful picture of jacarandas, didn't we?
Yes. Cool name too.
So I have a little funny story for you. It's not. This isn't a classic by any means, but it is slightly funny. It did kind of make me laugh. So I've been involved in a project at work, and we delivered the project, and they gave us a little bottle. I'm going to hold it up only for Mackelly. Nobody else can see this, but I'm holding it up.
That's a nice little bottle.
It's a nice little water bottle.
Yeah, it is. Very nice. Pleased.
So yesterday I went to work, and I was planning to play soccer, so I took my new water bottle. Now, I'm not germ-phobic, but when you get a brand new thing like that, you give it a rinse, right? You give it a rinse before
right.
you use
it.
So I gave it a rinse. Gave it a rinse, tipped it out, filled it with water. Over the course of the morning, I drank the water. And then before the soccer, I went and refilled it. And during the soccer match, I took a big hearty gulp of this. And the care instructions fell out into my mouth. Making me question how well I really cleaned it.
I'd say. Luckily, it was just care instructions and not...
Yes. Care instructions. Remove care instructions.
Did the little cilia packet fall into your mouth?
Thankfully, no.
That's pretty good.
That was the story. Just before we came on air, I had to rush out of the room and ask my wife, what was the stupid thing I did today? She said it was the water bottle. After some thinking of listing through the possible options, she said, water bottle.
That's right. I got... Simon's headphones went with him, so I got to be a fly on the wall of that conversation, and it was quite amusing to me. I said, would you ask her what's the stupid thing I've done recently? Her response is likely to be, do you want me to list that alphabetically or in order of severity? Goodness. Good stuff. Well, it's been beautiful, huh? I mean, it has been like picturesque outside for like 2 weeks straight, except for Halloween night.
Oh, it did rain on Halloween, yes. But you're right. The weather has been ridiculously beautiful.
Yes, and the leaves are perfect right now. And I just felt bad for the trick-or-treaters because the only night that wasn't idyllic was Halloween night. So yeah.
I had a call at work today to discuss how we're going to celebrate the World Cup.
Oh.
The soccer World Cup, or the football World Cup for the various listeners around the world. And they were saying, well, we should have watch parties for the US games. I said, well, you've only got 3 shots at that.
Better fit them in fast.
Exactly. And then they said, oh, we should do a special thing for the quarterfinals. And I was like, well, my team won't be involved at that stage either. So.
No dog in the fight at that point.
Mm-hmm.
When does it start?
It starts like second half of November, so it's not that far away.
Oh, yeah, right. Just around the corner.
Actually, the first game is on the Sunday before Thanksgiving. That's when the first game is.
Okay.
There's your timer.
And
But
where is it being
decided-
held?
It's being held in Qatar, or
Okay.
in the Middle East.
All right.
The one nice thing I got them to do was to do the watch parties, because the games are like in the morning to the afternoon, so they're kind of during work time.
Right.
Have them in the basement of the building G complex. I don't know, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
And I said, the best thing about that is it's a little bit out of sight should the boss walk by and wonder where you are. You know, you won't actually be... I have visions of them doing it in the main sort of area where everyone would see you goofing off, but I can sneak over there.
Good plan. Yeah, that's logical.
Well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jaime Lannister? Last we saw Jaime, he, Brienne, and his cousin Cleos docked their boat at an inn, where they bought 3 horses to continue their trek on land. They got a not-so-great vibe from the proprietor, so decided not to stay the night. They also didn't take the road he suggested they follow. We later learned that was smart, as a trap was indeed laid for them on that road. Mackelly, why don't we give them a summary of this one?
Okay. Brienne, Jaime, and Cleos have made it to Maidenpool. The town and everything around it has been destroyed by war. Even the famous pool of legend for which the town gets its name is choked with rotting corpses, which would make it a dead pool. Simon snuck an Easter egg joke in there.
I was pleased with that.
I was like, what? I didn't write that. Good stuff. Brienne leads the men out of town south, down the Duskendale Road. Cleos thinks hugging the coast would be safer, but Jaime's with Brienne. The road is faster, and he's missing his sister.
Jaime is reminded of how he and Cersei played at sex as small children, mimicking animals they'd seen in the act. When their mother found out, she separated their bedchambers, put a guard outside Cersei's door, and threatened to tell their father if they ever did anything of the sort again. But the threat was short-lived. She soon died giving birth to Tyrion, and the sleeping arrangements were relaxed.
Jaime thinks maybe Stannis did them a favor by spreading the tale of their incest all over the Seven Kingdoms. In Jaime's mind, it frees them to openly wed, and why not? The Targaryens often wed brother to sister, and the realm simply turned a blind eye to it. Maybe they should embrace incest to the point of marrying Joffrey to Marcella. They'll hold the throne with swords, regardless of if Joffrey was Robert's son or not. It'll just prove to the realm that the Lannisters are above their laws, just like gods and Targaryens.
Jaime has decided he will send Sansa Stark back to her mother, along with the other Stark girl if she can be found. Not because he thinks it will restore his honour, but because nobody expects that he will do it, and he finds the idea of shocking them all to be quite amusing.
His musings are interrupted by a hail of arrows headed their way. One hits Jaime's horse. More hit Cleos and send him lurching from his saddle. Unfortunately, Cleos's foot catches in the stirrup as he falls, and his horse drags him away, head bouncing off the ground. Brienne has an arrow in her back and her leg, but she seems not to notice. Jaime and Brienne charge the archers, who flee into the woods.
Brienne and Jaime find Cleos dead, his skull crushed by the earth, as his horse fled. Jaime wants Cleos's clothes and horse. Brienne is shocked by Jaime's lack of concern for his cousin's death. Jaime pulls Cleos's sword from its scabbard and slashes it at Bree, who parries. The pair begin a duel. The fight goes back and forth. Jaime's shocked to learn that Brienne is stronger than him and that his skills are rusty from lack of use.
Eventually, Jaime slips on a stone and falls. Laughter erupts all around them. By the outlandish attire, varied nationalities, and ragtag nature of the men, Jaime knows immediately it's the brave companions. Men led by Vargo Hoat, who is on his father's payroll. Rorg is with the group and threatens to rape Brienne.
The leader is named Urswick. Jaime tries to command Urswick to sever the wrist chains, but Urswick tells Jaime that Hoat is now Lord of Harrenhal, and Hoat, along with the rest of the brave companions, report only to Roose Bolton and the King of the North. On the ride to see Hoat, Jaime tries to bargain with Urswick for his freedom. Jaime also mentions that Brienne's father is loaded. They don't call Tarth the Sapphire Isle for nothing, so Urswick should treat her well and ransom her. Jaime hopes it might spare her some of the unpleasantness she's soon likely to face.
Urswick isn't buying it, but he does tell the men to leave Brienne be. She's an expensive asset. They meet up with Hoat and the main contingent of the brave companions at a small sept. No, they're not praying. The septon has been hung, and his corpse used for target practice. The carved statues of the gods dragged out and stripped of anything of value. Jaime tells Hoat he's made a mistake leaving his father's service, but it's not too late. Tywin will pay well for Jaime. Hoat agrees. He'll have half the gold in Casterly Rock, but first he needs to send a message. With that, Jaime is thrown to the ground and his arms stretched across a rock. Jaime thinks it's a scare tactic, right up to the part where the Dothraki brings his arak down on him. Jaime screams.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Yeah, so, I mean, we normally go through the chapter sort of like chronologically, but just focusing on the end there, are we convinced that he was hurt? Are we going to take that assumption? Because it literally doesn't say he was going to be brave, he was going to guts it out. I'm guessing if he screamed, it's because it was no longer a matter of choice.
Yeah, you have in the notes here an alternative that would leave him unharmed.
Unscathed, yes. The chains he wanted severed get severed.
Right,
but,
yes, yeah. And that's
but he wouldn't have screamed.
He could have screamed just in surprise, just like, ah! So, I don't think the chapter ends in a way that you know for sure that he has been harmed. Okay.
So at various points we might say he's been mutilated, but take that with a pinch of salt, because he might just be dechained.
Dechained, right. Which is what he was wanting in the first place.
That's right. Urswick just needed to do it the hard way.
When Vargo Hoat said he was going to send a message, it was to Jaime.
Yes.
So Jaime 3 comes on the heels of Cat 3, and it feels like it's meant as a continuation of the story thread.
So remind me what happened in Cat 3, because it's been a week.
Well, in Cat 3, the chapter started with Rickard Karstark killing Willem and Tion, Lannister and Frey. Then he was executed, and throughout the chapter we also learned that they had lost the Karstarks to their, no longer on their side.
Yes. Actually, the chapters are quite parallel in that respect. There's sort of like it starts with discussion, goes through a bit of a fight when the great John Umber smashes Karstark's face in, and ends with a execution style thing.
Right. Yes, a sharp blade falling on someone who's bent over something.
Yes.
It is also. It's like. In Cat 3, we saw how Cat's actions, the ramifications of Cat's actions in Riverrun. And now here, we're seeing how Cat's actions are paying off. For her freeing Jaime being the action, are paying off, or, as it were, not paying off so much.
There is a point in this chapter where it feels like they are paying off, because he decides he's going to send the girls home.
Right.
If he can.
Yes.
But,
yeah, but it also looks like the Karstark men who've been sent out on a scavenger hunt to find Jaime are going to have to wrestle Jaime off the brave companions if they want Alice Karstark's hand in marriage.
Yeah, I mean, because the chapter ends so abruptly, we have no idea where they're headed. I mean, it sounded like they were going to take him back to Harrenhal, in which case, certainly, if I was the Karstark men, I would be heading in the direction of Harrenhal, so there could be a coming together there. But, just given what Hoat has done to Jaime, I do wonder if he's now gone off script and they might be planning something else here.
Yeah, because if he takes him back to Harrenhal, at least last we checked, Roose Bolton was still there. So he'd have to lug Jaime back to Harrenhal and be like, look what I did. I cut off our key assets, chains, possibly.
Chains, possibly, yes. Yeah, and to me, yeah, well, we'll definitely get into that a little bit. But barring the capture by the brave companions, they actually had escaped far enough that they would never get caught by the Karstarks. I mean, they're basically into Lannister-held territory at this point.
Yeah. So it's been 10 chapters since the last Jaime chapter, and they've gone a long way from the Inn of the Kneeling Man to Maidenpool. That's a pretty hefty distance, east to west, more or less, across the Riverlands. Well, the story, the chapter opens with them in Maidenpool, and they see that the Mootons, who are the lords of Maidenpool, are holed up in their castle, and they let the townfolk fend for themselves because there's corpses everywhere, including in the dead pool that was once the Maidenpool. I originally, speaking of Maidenpool, I was originally going to bring this up in Pedantry, but then as I thought about it as the week had gone on, I guess it's more or less a character decision. And we know not to put character decisions into Pedantry Corner. So I'm just going to say it now. What in the world are they even doing in Maidenpool?
They have gone a long way.
They left the Inn of the Kneeling Man, and remember, they went south instead of southeast because the innkeep, who was in an innkeep, said, go southeast, that's the safer road, and they were like, no, we're going to take the road due south. So they headed due south, and somehow they ended up very far east, so somewhere along the way they've looped around and gone east, and, you know, the one place they'd want to avoid is where? Harrenhal, right? I mean, that's the one place you don't want to be, because that's where the second largest group of Robb's force is, and you're trying to avoid them. So
yeah, it's actually it is a good point, and it does make me wonder if there was a change of idea from George Martin, because the logical reason to go to Maidenpool is if you were traveling by river.
Right.
If you were
yes,
traveling
the river
by
would
river,
take you down that way.
It would take you to Maidenpool, and from Maidenpool you would then go across land to King's Landing, and that would be the route you would take. But in the last chapter, we know that they decided not to do that because they were led to believe that the river was blocked.
Right.
And,
yes.
And they went by horse, and by horse you wouldn't go to Maidenpool. The one thing I'll say, though, I mean, from the Inn of the Kneeling Man, if you take the river road east, you get to Darry. And Darry is a sort of a kind of crossroads. You can head south down the King's Road, but then you're definitely into Harrenhal territory at that point. Or you could keep going west to Maidenpool, and I guess that's what they did.
East.
But
east.
I said west, I meant east,
yeah.
yes. Yeah. And that does, because from there there is a road to King's Landing from Maidenpool. So
right. But would they have taken the river road, though? You know, that's like, if they're trying to stay off the beaten path, would they have traveled down the river road to get that path?
Yeah.
It just seems like if you took the Inn of the Kneeling Man and King's Landing, drew the straightest line that's furthest away from Harrenhal, you'd just keep going straight south.
Yes, you'd go the other side of the God's Eye, in fact, yeah.
Yes, you'd go down the west side, as far west as you could get, straight down, and then you'd cut east to King's Landing. So
yeah, but then again, that's a much harder traveling than staying by the road. Now,
true.
I don't know. It's a really good question, Mackelly. I think there's ways to interpret this. One is they're so in need of speed that they risk the road. They so believe that they're invulnerable to attack that they use the road.
Yeah.
That it got forgotten that they weren't on the river anymore.
There has to be smaller roads in the middle section of the Riverlands, because there are castles and towns there.
Yes, which must be connected. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like they would be going off-roading.
Cross-country.
Yes.
Yeah. But the problem is, of course, I mean, even those small roads are going to be travelled. That's the thing. If you're trying to avoid people, you need to get off the roads.
Right.
So maybe you choose the biggest road because you expect to hear them coming, perhaps?
Maybe. I don't know. It just seems way out of the way and a much closer route to Harrenhal than if they had just kept going south like they started when they left the inn. Anyway, not pedantry, because it's a character decision, but just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Cleos, so as I said, from Maidenpool to Duskendale there is a road, and then from Duskendale to King's Landing there's a road. Cleos wants to hug the coast instead, but that's an awful long way around.
I don't. It's vague what he means. I don't know if he means to go east until Rook's Rest and then cut south, or literally go all the way out along the southern coast of the Bay of Crabs to Dryden and then circle back along the northern coast of the Gullet. Either way, they're both a long way.
Yeah.
In the wrong direction.
My guess is what you said. Like go as far east as Rook's Rest, and then go south then, and come via, because there is road again then from Rook's Rest to Duskendale.
Which I'm not looking at the map right now. Maybe you are. Isn't that the Duskendale Road? Doesn't it just run back into the Duskendale Road? Because
you'd end up on the same road. Yeah, once you get to Duskendale, you're on the same road. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure what you've accomplished, but I don't know. I'm not there, so.
And especially, surely between Duskendale and King's Landing, you're now into safe territory. Maidenpool clearly is up for grabs still. There's bodies and there's brave companions.
Right. Yeah.
But
right.
I mean, Duskendale is a day's ride from King's Landing, Well, maybe more than that, but...
Yeah, I mean, once you get to Duskendale, we know Randall Tarley and company are in Duskendale, because that's where they met Helmut Hart and Robert Glover, and drove that force back.
Yeah. So, at this point, Jaime's thinking about various things in his life, thinking about his childhood with Cersei, and it's not entirely unreasonable that their mother sundered them when she got wind of what they were up to, sort of playing sex games as children. But this came to an end when the mother died. I mean, presumably she would have kept it a fairly closely guarded secret, and so her death, it went with her. And presumably the castle staff who had been charged with keeping them apart had more important things to do, dealing with a brand new baby without a mother and a very upset Tywin Lannister.
Yep, very true. And
keeping a pair of twins who keep themselves occupied
right.
seems a waste of time.
You know what they say about kids? If they're being quiet, they're probably causing trouble.
Right.
Yeah, if Joanna had lived, she likely would have put an end to the romantic link between Cersei and Jaime, even if she had lived just another year or so, just long enough for them to sever that, or to get them to understand. Because at this time, it's just kids.
They're just playing.
They don't really know what they're doing. Had it been drilled into their heads, no, that's not acceptable. We don't do that with our siblings.
Yeah.
This might have this whole incest thing might not have happened as it had.
Yeah. And then he sort of extrapolates this to musing on now being able to marry Cersei because Stannis has done him the favour of broadcasting their crimes. I think he is underestimating the public's distaste for incest.
Yes.
He compares himself to the Targaryens who got away with it because they were different. They were foreigners. They were like to gods. But actually, none of that is true. It's because they had bloody great dragons. That's how they got away with it.
Yeah. So his comparison between the Lannister, his family, the Lannisters, and the Targaryens doesn't take the doctrine of exceptionalism into account. Right. And we talked about this in a ages-old episode. Yeah, I'm sure it was a Dany chapter. But until that doctrine was accepted, the faith in the Targaryens literally went to war over the Targaryen incest. And much of the realm rebelled against them too. It wasn't just the faith. It was, many a lord. It was King Jaehaerys Targaryen, who was the king after Maegor the Misunderstood. he worked out the doctrine with the faith in order to keep the realm and the faith accepting the incestuous marriage by the Targaryens. And so if I remember correctly, the basic gist of the doctrine was that the faith was born in Andalos, the faith of the Seven, where laws say that incest is an abomination, and the doctrine did not dispute that. There's one caveat. The Targaryens were not like other men, as you say, as they were the only people in the world who rode dragons. So, at least since the doom of Valyria. And also, the Targaryens did not have roots in Andalos. And in Valyria, it was tradition to marry brother to sister. And, they said something like, the gods made us this way, and it was not for men to judge that they do things differently than how other people do it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the Lannisters could get to a point where their power is so secure that they could try this, but there's nothing to say the faith wouldn't rise up against them, and they would be back to square one. They'd be back to fighting, upstart lords, and they don't have dragons to fight.
Right. Yes. As you said, probably one of the biggest factors is the realm was tired of fighting the uphill battle of warring against people who had dragons.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no way a religion writes a document of exceptionalism for anyone who can't murder them in droves,
Yes. Good point. Yep.
And now, but the Lannisters cannot do that because the Lannisters can only kill in conventional ways, and so yeah, it's not going to work.
No. And then I will say though, the idea to openly marry Cersei doesn't bode well for him accepting his father's plan of Cersei to remarry.
Good point. And I mean, that might just be sort of idle fancy, sort of like, oh, it'd be great to marry Cersei kind of thing. But then he sort of doubles down by suggesting that they really embrace this and they marry Joffrey to Myrcella. And on some levels, he's got to know that what he and Cersei are doing is wrong, right?
Or else they wouldn't keep it quiet, Right. If they didn't know it was wrong.
They fell in love. They can't help themselves. Okay, fine. But then to try and mask that crime by asking Myrcella, she's not always the sweetest kid, but she's fairly sweet, to marry Joffrey, who is never the sweetest kid.
He's never.
Has Jaime never met his offspring? I mean, he's revolting. He's awful. And never mind, even if they were the two sweetest kids on earth, asking them to marry one another when they are brother and sister is repugnant on every possible level.
Yep.
And Jaime, of all people, knows the danger of incest. He killed King Aerys, who was mad as a brush because of incestuous breeding.
Yes. Yep, you make a solid argument there. I can't dispute that in any way. Everything you said there.
Yeah, and Jaime's he's just wrong on this, and you get the feeling that he's become a POV character because we're going to watch a bit of a story arc of Jaime, of like, he's been this sort of like figure of menace and horror to the north, and maybe we heard him in this chapter saying he might just release Sansa and Arya. But he's got some serious flaws if he's even considering that for 1 second. Right. Marrying Cersei, that's one thing, but marrying Myrcella to Joffrey, that is a whole different thing.
Even if they weren't brother and sister, marrying anyone to Joffrey is cruel.
And marrying your own daughter to Joffrey, whoever the heck Joffrey is. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, yes, good news for Sansa, potentially Arya. Jaime does intend to hold up his end of the deal, not out of any kind of honesty, but he wants to confound other people's expectations of him. But as we said, we're not sure if he's going to remember any of this, given what later comes in this chapter.
Yeah, and that's really cool. Everybody, even we, earlier in the story, we're like, yeah, that's very unlikely that this is going to happen. And, everybody has told Kat, you're a fool for putting your faith in Jaime. It's never going to happen. So that's great. One thing that still keeps tripping me up is how everybody knows that Arya is missing. I know she wasn't there the one time Cleos said he was in the hall in the throne room and saw Sansa, didn't see Arya. And so I went digging because I mentioned it last Cat chapter as well.
Yeah.
This was the last chapter. She makes one comment when she and Brienne are sitting at dinner when there's fanfare going on, and she had just learned about Rickon and Bran being killed. She thinks to herself, and Arya, she must be dead too. Just without really having, just like mother's intuition type situation. That is the only time that I could find where anything about Arya was brought up. But yet...
So did Cleos not provide some information about this? I mean, you're saying he just said, I didn't see her.
Yes, he said, I saw Sansa. She said, Kat said, what about Arya? He said, I didn't see Arya. If I recall it correctly.
And Tyrion and co were very careful not to let Cleos know anything they didn't want him to know, right? It's not like he was... Because I'm just extrapolating here. That's what he was told to tell Kat, but he was told to tell Jaime the whole truth, perhaps. It feels like information has crept out that shouldn't have, that we don't see how this information has got out. But I mean, hey, things happen off screen, so we'll live with that.
Yes, you're right. That's a good point. It must be something like that because I can't recall any particular instance where the news of Arya's escape would have gotten out. Yeah.
So, just to mention of the military tactics, Jaime and Brienne, when they are attacked by these archers, they charge them, and the archers flee. And Jaime was very sure that was going to be the outcome because the point he made was that archers are always lightly armored, and they bolt as soon as the battle heads their way because they just don't have any defense against it. They can't reload quick enough to defend themselves, so they run.
Or at least so the gamble that Jaime took.
Wow.
Doesn't take that long to reload an arrow.
True, but I mean,
there was only 2 of them. If there are any archer worth their salt, they should have been able to take out those 2.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I mean, I guess when you're a soldier like that, you just have to rationalize the risks you're taking. The best chance here is to charge them.
So I guess they fired on them hoping to kill all 3 in a hail of arrows, and when they didn't, I think they shot a second one.
There was a second one.
Yeah, it was second.
So some
wave.
of it is timing. Like when they send arrows, then charge them because A, you'll ride underneath the arrows, and B, they're not ready for you.
Yes, true. And we know from previous experience that Jaime has a clear disdain for archers. It's not the first time we've seen such dislike. He told that boy from the inn of the Kneeling Man to put down a crossbow and pick up a spear or maul, and he referred to the crossbow as the coward's weapon. And but then also what I thought about when he thinks to himself as he's charging them, he hopes Brienne is coming behind him because soon they're going to realize he's an unarmed man in chains. And it reminded me of Tyrion always saying about Jaime that he rushes into things without thinking.
Right.
And, just like the ambush of Ned Stark and killing Ned's men and pushing Bran out the window. As my train of thought got going, I also thought it does make me worry for Willis and the sword in the gut that Tyrion is afraid he might come down with when Jaime finds out. If Willis Tyrell, that is.
But he may not care for archers, but he knows what they sound like because he ducked before the first arrow landed because he heard the thrum which got to his ear before the arrow did, and that kind of saved his life. And these instincts were sadly not shared by his cousin Cleos.
No. No, not so much. I was wondering, did this? Yeah, you're right. I didn't pick up on it until I read your note, and then when I was reading the chapter again, it was a quiet thrum, like birds, being released or something. And yeah, he immediately responded to it. I guess he's been in battle. He knows what a hail of arrows sounds like when they're launched. But I wondered if the singing at Maidenpool brings on this particular bout with the archers, which led to Cleos' death, which led to the fight between him and Brienne, which led to them being spotted and heard and then captured by the brave companions.
You mean Jaime himself singing?
Yeah. I guess we didn't mention that in the summary. Jaime was singing the song about the Maidenpool, the pool in Maidenpool, and Brienne told him to shut up, and Cleos said, "Please be quiet. You're going to draw the Mootons out of their castle, and they have their fealty to Riverrun."
Right.
So I just wonder if maybe that's how they ended up coming across this group of outlaws. And oddly enough, he doesn't think it's the same group as the brave companions.
It's funny. I was going to ask you that actually because it seemed to me. Well, let's hold off on that because I'll mention it when we get there. But
okay.
Your stomach was somewhat turned by his lack of care for his cousin. He's a soldier. He's seen death. He knows you strip the body and you move on.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it is family, a little more than just a fellow soldier, but
TV show Jaime actually murders Cleos. So
I thought I remembered that. Yes,
yeah.
Right.
So book Jaime being callously indifferent to Cleos' death is actually a step up from TV show.
It's a step in the right direction, right? Yeah. But so Jaime wants to be armed. He wants one of the callous things he says, like immediately upon discovering Cleos, after Brienne says he's still warm, and Jaime says he'll cool soon enough, which is really nice thing to say about your recently deceased cousin. He says, "I want his clothes. I'm tired of wearing rags, and I want his sword." And Brienne says, "I'm not arming you." And Jaime says, I'll say an oath to not harm you if you arm me." Her response is, "Your oath is no good to me. You also swore an oath to Ares." And his response back to her is, "You haven't roasted anyone in your armor yet." And we know what that means, but she would not know what that means. Because in the last Jaime chapter, he told us through his internal thoughts about Ares roasting Rickard Stark and strangling Brandon Stark. And we know that he killed Ares because Ares was planning something with Rosart involving a warm welcome. All he said out loud to Brienne was, "You're too young to remember Ares."
Yeah, well,
so she must have been like, "What a weird thing to say to me."
except the rumors of Ares included atrocities, right? It's not like he was thought to be rather heavy on the taxation. He was known to be psychopathic, basically, and so
yeah.
The fact that she doesn't know specifically what he's talking about, she knew he's talking about Ares when he says that.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Possibly. I mean, unless she knows about the Rickard Karstark.
Literally, he's comparing an oath he makes to her to an oath he made to Ares.
Yes, you're right.
And for that reason, he's saying, that is something that Ares did that you haven't done. I broke my oath to him because that oath needed to be broken.
Yes,
you have
good
not
point.
done these things.
Right. That's a good point.
So, and now they start to fight. As soon as he pulls the sword from Cleos, he starts to fight with her. And this is the question I was going to ask. The book does seem to indicate that it was 2 different attacks. There was a group of archers that attacked them, presumably just to loot their bodies, who ran away when they failed. And then the brave companions stumbled upon them having this fight. But it struck me when they were having this fight that they were being really rash about the potential for getting shot with arrows again.
I know, right?
Because now I know Jaime wanted his freedom, but again, Brienne is escorting him to King's Landing.
They're on the same page. They're working toward the same goal. Yes,
and they risked everything for this fight.
And again, it goes back to Jaime reacting without thinking of the consequences, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago. He was the description said he was tired of her nagging him. I don't remember exactly the words he used, but he was tired of her constantly being on him, and so he pulled Cleos' sword from his scabbard and attacked Brienne. And it was a lengthy fight description. It was a cool fight. I mean, it was back and forth, right? Yeah. The ultimate message that I took away from it is Jaime's arrogant and hot-headed and starts a fight with Brienne when it was really bad timing to do so. And he was forced to use a one-handed sword with a two-handed sword grip, which would diminish his ability to for effectiveness.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that he was surprised that Brienne was both stronger than him, and he was impressed by her fighting abilities.
Yeah, but you got to think that without the year in the dungeon as prep, he probably had the upper hand. I mean, it was very close,
right?
Anyway, and he's not practiced, and he's not well fed, and
he's got chains on his wrists,
yeah. And yet it was very close. You got to imagine, and no disgrace to Brienne, Jaime's one of the elite fighters in the whole world.
Right? Oh yeah. He actually thinks of that. He thinks of all the great, strong men, dead or alive, and thinks, I would have beaten all of them. But yet somehow, this woman is getting stronger while I'm getting weaker.
9 months of starvation rations and then marching way out of your way to get to King's Landing.
Yeah, that will take its toll.
Yeah. So Urswick leads the band of the brave companions who catch the two of them. He says that he serves Roose Bolton and the King of the North. That's who the brave companions are working for now, which is a surprise to Jaime. Jaime thought they were still on the payroll of the Lannisters, and so he thought this was kind of good news for him.
Right.
Brienne, of course, tries to reach out to them, tries the olive branch of we're on the same side then, because I'm working on the instructions of the King of the North, but the brave companions are clearly not that interested in following those orders. They've got a new plaything and they're going to use it.
Right. It doesn't seem like they're all that interested in following orders, even if they come from the King of the North or his mother directly.
Yeah. So Jaime and Brienne are tied back to back and put on a horse, and basically, because Rorge, our old friend Rorge, who we met when he was terrorizing Arya, is threatening to rape Brienne, Jaime goes to bat for her. First of all, he advises her to take what's coming as quietly as possible. And she asks him, is that what you would do? And he's like, oh God, no, I'd fight to the death, but he doesn't want her to be killed. So he gives her this advice. But then he actually comes up with a way to convince the brave companions to leave her untouched. And it's very ironic because it's of her potential ransom value. Which he overinflates. He says that Tarth is known as the Sapphire Isle, but that while that is true, it's because of the blue seas around it, not because the sapphire's there.
Right. He leaves that detail out.
He does leave that detail out. But it's enough for Urswick to sort of tell the men to leave her alone. They want her ransomable. But it's so ironic because of what later then happens to Jaime.
I know, it is.
On the subject of ransomable, Jaime, there is literally every single human being in the world could ransom Jaime to Tywin Lannister for as much gold as you could ever want.
Right.
With one exception. And that's the guy who mutilated him.
who either mutilated him or cut his chains.
Or cut his chains, exactly. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
It's baffling to me. It's truly baffling.
Yep. I agree, especially considering they, at least through the end of this chapter, multiple times Urswick says, be careful with that one, meaning Brienne. She's worth her weight in sapphires.
Right.
And Jaime's worth his weight in gold if you keep both of, if you don't harm him, we'll say. But so there's much in this chapter, speaking of Jaime going to bat for Brienne here, there's much in this chapter about Jaime's honor. He's going to return Sansa, and it's not for any hopes of salvaging his honor, but simply to shock everyone since his honor is so badly regarded. And of course, Brienne says your oaths are worthless. You swore an oath to Ares, which we just talked about a few minutes ago. And Urswick says, I'd be a fool to believe a promise of an oathbreaker, kingslayer. And Jaime correctly, after this one, Urswick being the last one to mention it, correctly ruminates that it all goes back to Ares. And basically that one decision defines his life. Now we've gotten like a good portion. We've gotten a good portion of the details of why he did what he did.
Yeah.
And knowing all these details, you've said multiple times, I would be shouting this to the rooftops. This is why I did it, people. Yeah. But he never says anything. And, he's just begun to live his life as someone who has a terrible reputation and honor because he made that one act, did that one act.
But I will say, though, if the news that Stannis has shared to the realm that Jaime is sort of celebrating has been shared because now he feels he can profess his love openly.
Yeah.
Is also not great. That's a second bad thing. And it really goes to, okay, he also took an oath not to have a wife, not to, father children.
Right.
He's broken. Did he break that because Aerys was crazy?
Yes. That's.
I don't know. It's
that right. That is beyond the one act of killing his king.
Now that all hasn't really come back to burn him yet. But now it's out there. That's the thing. He's been under arrest the whole time that this story has been spreading through the Seven Kingdoms. So he doesn't know what effect it's had. But it's not helped his reputation any, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's solid right there. That's solid.
Yeah. So he smartly makes a plea to Urswick to take Jaime to King's Landing, get a reward. If I were Urswick, I'd be thinking about it, because I'm just second in command to Vargo Hoat. My little band could easily keep these two safe and go all the way to King's Landing and get a nice fat reward. But
although Jaime's thinking in his head, I was really looking forward to watching him hang with his pockets full of gold. So.
and you see, the thing is, I think that's a toughie, because Tywin would pay to get Jaime back, clearly. But he does owe the Brave Companions for their treachery.
Right.
But Urswick is not the leader of the Brave Companions.
Again, right?
So he could give him the gold he wants and send him on his merry way. I agree. That.
I think that I could see that as a possibility as well. Could also see him hanging with his pockets full of gold.
True.
Urswick asks, what about Vargo Hoat? And Jaime says, shall I sing you a bar of Rains of Castamere, or a line from Rains of Castamere? Now, we just learned about that just 2 chapters ago. So as a quick reminder, in case you're like, what in the world is Rains of Castamere? We learned back in Tyrion 3 about the Westerlings' betrayal finally reached the Lannisters. And Tyrion thinks that Tywin doesn't suffer disloyalty. He extinguished houses Rain and Tarbeck, root and branch, as he says. And that the singers made a song called The Rains of Castamere. And then he's thinking this to us. When Lord Farman became defiant, Tywin sent an envoy with a lute and played Rains of Castamere for Lord Farman, and the defiance ended.
Yes.
So
I will say, I hadn't put this together until right this second, but of course, this is the one thing that Vargo perhaps already knows. He knows that if everybody as I said, every person on Earth has the ability to get a healthy reward for taking Jaime to King's Landing, with the one exception of Vargo Hoat already, even without the mutilation, because he betrayed Tywin Lannister and will never be forgiven because Lannisters pay their debts.
Yep.
And so maybe that sort of gave him license to do whatever he wanted to Jaime. I hadn't really thought about that, but that does make a certain amount of sense.
I had not thought about that either, but right.
So they find the rest of the Brave Companions sacking a small sept, robbing it of any value, killing the septon, and using his body as target practice.
Yeah, there's no concern for the sacrilegious acts going on here, but that's because one of the things about the Brave Companions is that so many of them are from Essos.
Yeah.
So they don't follow the faith of the Seven. So there's not the same religious connection to these statues and septs and this septon as the Westerosi might feel toward this act, the acts that are going on.
So when Hoat Hoat doesn't actually swing the blade. It's the Dothraki guy who swings the blade, but on Hoat's command. When Hoat does this, he says he wants to send a message to Tywin. Now, if we're assuming mutilation of some sort, the message, it definitely sends a message. There's no question about that. But it's a little bit difficult to decipher. I think if I were my betting man, I would say that Tywin will hear that message as, please come and kill me. My name is Vargo Hoat, because he's going to be really mad.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time thinking about what exactly the message can be, at least from what we know at this point in the story. And, maybe it's, we're going to keep Jaime hostage and ask for money. And if we don't get that money, we're going to keep sending you more pieces of Jaime.
Yeah,
but
I guess that's possible.
But if they kept him whole, if they didn't do anything to him, they possibly could have gotten money anyway. I guess being that they know being that they know that they're already in hot water with Tywin, maybe they thought this was a way to protect themselves.
I do question whether or not they're working with Bolton's blessing here. If so, then Roose is still further from the expected standards of the new King of the North than we even seen so far.
Right.
If not, then I don't know. Hoat's making a lot of enemies.
Certainly, this would not be what the King in the North himself would want, because in light of the Rickard Karstark murders, this only hurts Robb standing with the Lannisters and increases the likelihood of retribution on Sansa.
Yeah.
And Arya, for as far as they know.
It's a shame this news didn't reach Rickard Karstark before he was beheaded, though, because he would have been pleased.
He would have. It would have put a smile on his face.
Yeah, go on, chop my head off, see if I can. And also, just to sort of like broadly, this news, assuming mutilation, is going to reach Tywin Lannister at some point. This cannot be good news for Sansa Stark.
Right, I agree.
Because she's been abused as a prisoner, but she's basically healthy, and now she is the most prominent prisoner on the Lannister side. So,
yep, and Jaime's in the care of the Starks right now, and
yes, very much so.
Something very possibly could have happened to him at the end of this chapter.
Yeah. Do you have some background for us?
I do. So, since Jaime was comparing the Targaryens and the Lannisters and how the realm just turned the other cheek when when the Targaryens married brother to sister, I thought I would mention Aenys Targaryen. Aenys the first Targaryen. He was the second Targaryen king of Westeros. He was the eldest son of Aegon the Conqueror himself and his sister wife Rhaenys. Aenys married Alyssa Valerian in 22 AC. And as Aegon the Conqueror had recently conquered the Seven Kingdoms with Balerion and his sister wives and their dragons, nobody said much about their incestual marriages. However, after Aegon the Conqueror died and Aenys ascended the Iron Throne, the realm began to stir a bit. Aenys wasn't as strong or commanding as his father, and rebels soon rose up. Lords began murmuring that Aenys was weak and not fit to rule. Everything came to a head when the king announced that his eldest son, also named Aegon, would marry his eldest daughter, Rhaena. The negative reactions were heard far and wide. The faith condemned the marriage as an obscenity. The warriors' sons kept tabs on all who attended the wedding ceremony. When the new couple went on their procession around the kingdoms, they were jeered everywhere they went. Septim Murmison was expelled from the faith for performing the ceremony. King Aenys tried to explain that incestuous marriages were a common custom in Valyria. However, it fell on deaf ears. The High Septon referred to him as King Abomination, and Septon Murmison was killed in a riot. Lords and small folk alike rose up and denounced Aenys as king. The unrest led to what is known as the Faith Militant Uprising. King Aenys fled to Dragonstone. Right before leaving, he was nearly killed by assassins who scaled the walls of the royal manse. This, of course, was pre-Red Keep. And on Dragonstone, Aenys fell ill, but he refused to rain fire down on those who rose up against him, even after learning that his son and daughter were besieged at Crakehall. The king died at age 35 on Dragonstone. It's said he looked more like a man of 60. And of course, his death led to the struggle between his son Aegon and his brother Maegor to follow him on the Iron Throne, which we know Maegor won.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I just wanted to point out that not every time that a Targaryen wed brother to sister was it accepted, or at least a blind eye turned to it.
So comparisons with the television show, generally this was captured. Jaime gets hold of a sword and fights Brienne, the culmination of which, again, close fight, they're both captured. Cleos was not with them. He was murdered by Jaime a little while ago. Their captors are Northmen. The brave companions were dropped entirely. The captors are Northmen led by a guy named Locke, who appears to just be a TV creation. There are Locks. There's a Locke in the Night's Watch.
Right, yeah.
So presumably intended to be but I think it's just a creation for the TV. Locke is portrayed by the ever-brilliant Noah Taylor, who you might know from Peaky Blinders, and he was also Charlie Bucket's dad in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh,
which is
okay.
somewhat incongruous, because he's really awful as Locke and really awful in Peaky Blinders too. But he was very sweet.
Shows his range as an actor.
That's range right there, yes. The thing that makes Jaime scream is done, but seemingly more in a sort of fit of anger by Locke than any kind of plan. But obviously, I don't really know if there was a plan by Vargo Hoat in the book either. But it is kind of like it's done in a sort of like temper sort of thing. But actually, in some ways, it makes more sense to me for a Northman to do this than the Brave Companions, because the Brave Companions could have. I don't know. There's just nothing to be gained from it. The Northmen were perhaps angry with Jaime for escaping, and they were
right,
punished.
and he killed a lot of Northmen.
Exactly, yeah.
Sure.
Pedantry Corner, you've already talked a little bit about Maidenpool. I couldn't really find anything here. It all seemed to hang together.
Right. I am not putting Maidenpool in Pedantry Corner because it's ultimately a decision by the characters to go the wrong direction.
So, news and notes.
Rise of the Dragon hit number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list, if you're curious, in the advice, how-to, and miscellaneous category.
Okay.
All right.
It's an odd category for it to be in, I would say.
I agree. I guess it's the miscellaneous part.
Yeah, I guess so.
It doesn't fit advice or how-to, I'm pretty sure. If you're wondering, it was just behind a book called Go-To Dinners, and above a book called Atomic Habits. Okay. So, congratulations to George Martin and, of course, Ilio and Linda and all the artists for their beautiful artwork. The book is quite beautiful.
Yeah. On the subject of the author himself, he had a 16-minute interview on the Stephen Colbert Show, which is worth viewing. We shared the link on Discord and the social medias.
Yes, it's good stuff. I enjoyed it.
All right, in conclusion, so Jaime's escape has hit a serious roadblock. Hoat has current fealty to Roose Bolton and Harrenhal, but we know his loyalty can be bought and can be switched.
And possibly doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't seem like... Right. I mean, even though Urswick just said they support Roose Bolton and the King in the North, when Brienne said, I'm here on a mission from the King in the North, it didn't matter. Yeah. So...
But they've done something that means that they're the only people who can never ransom Jaime. So where to next?
Right.
Jaime does appear to have saved Brienne from the worst of her torment, but for how much does that last? I mean, I'm going to guess if Jaime has been mutilated, that he's going to be sulky and insular for a little while and not really care about Brienne as much anymore.
Maybe. Yeah, I just wonder how long the story of this Sapphire Island
holds up. You're right.
Yeah. With the likes of Rorg and Biter around, it seems...
They don't care about sapphires.
Right.
Sapphires don't satisfy their immediate needs.
Yes, I agree.
And we said farewell to Sir Cleos. You were, or had you been a bit funnier, some comic relief.
Right. I do have to say, I feel for Jenna Lannister Frey and Emmon Frey. In 2 chapters, they've lost 2 sons. Tion was their other son. So now they've lost Cleos and Tion. So that is sad.
At least it wasn't at the hands of Jaime in the book.
True.
So Jaime wants to wed Cersei and free Sansa. Well, he did think that. God only knows what he thinks now.
Yeah.
All right. There's 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a review. There's no better way to spread the word. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. Or you can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can consider joining the other sustainers at the Knight of the Realm or the Lord Paramount levels, and those really help us to keep this thing going, and they provide you some cool perks, not least ad-free episodes.
That's right. And of course, you can always reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com and go out and follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.